Okay, we're going to go over some of these homework questions. We're going to go over the odds. So number 15, or I should say number 1, is 15 over 18. Now we're going to use our factor trees for 15. So we discussed this in class. We're going to factor 15 into the product of its primes. So we start with 15. We need two numbers multiplied together is 15. That's 3 and 5. These are both prime. So we broke 15 down. We're now going to break 18 down. 9 times 2, where 2 is prime. 9 is not prime, so we break it down together. We break it down again. We need two numbers multiplied together is 9. And we have 3 and 3. So here is breaking 15 and 18 down. So we're going to replace 15 with 3 times 5. We replace 18 with 3 times 3 times 2. And so now we're going to use the cancellation property. So we notice by the cancellation property here, I can get rid of a 3 and a 3. I can't get rid of a 5 right here because there is no 5 down at the bottom here. So this means we're done. And if we take a closer look, we're going to be left with 5 over 6. And we reduce this, or simplified, reduce to lowest term, this fraction 15 over 18. So this is how we go about reducing our fractions, okay, using factor trees and the cancellation property. So let's do the next one. Number 3, 15 over 35. Now we know we already broke down in the previous problem here 15. We know that's written as 3 times 5. So we're going to replace our 15 with 3 times 5. But using factor trees on 35, we know 7 times 5 is 35. These are both prime. And so what we're going to have here, we're going to represent 35 with 7 times 5. We're now going to use our cancellation property. And if we notice that we can get rid of the 5 and the 5 because it's on top and bottom, when we're left with that 3 and 7, we can't cancel there. This is our final answer. 3/7. And we're done. Let's look at number 5. 14 over 28. Now we should put it a little more in the middle here. 14 over 28. We're going to break down 14 now. So 14 we'll put over here. Two numbers multiplied together is 14. 2 and 7. They're both prime, so we're done with factoring 14. 28. 4 times 7 is 28. 7 is prime, so we break 4 down, and that's 2 times 2. So 14 is 2 times 7. 28, 2 times 2 times 7. This is the prime factorization of 14 and 28. We're going to cancel a 2 and a 2 here. Okay, we're using the cancellation property. We can also get rid of a 7 and a 7. So if we take a closer look here, there's only a 2 that's left, and that 2 is left on the bottom. So in our final answer, we have to keep that 2 on the bottom. The question becomes, what's on top if everything is gone? Right? We look at this here, we say, oh, these two terms are gone. Well, put a 1 here because 1 times anything is always itself. So really we have 1 over 2. And 14 over 28 does reduce to 1/2. And that's what we're doing here in this worksheet. So we're using our factorization, factor trees, prime factorization. Write every number as a product of its building blocks, its primes, and then cancel. And that's our technique here. So this is number 5. Number 7. 9 over 24. We're going to factor the 9. 9, again, two numbers multiplied together is 9, is 3 times 3. 24. 8 times 3. Let's break down 8. 4 times 2. Break down 4. 2 times 2. So we're going to have 3 times 3 for a numerator, replacing the 9. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 3 2's, and a 3 replacing 24. I'm free to cancel. A 3 on top, a 3 on bottom. The second 3 over here doesn't cancel with any of these 2's. So we can't cancel here. That means we're done. So a 3 is left on top, and these 2's are left on the bottom. Final answer is 3 over 8. Because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, and the 3 is left on top, 3/8. Number 9, 28 over 32. So put it here, 28 over 32. We're going to have to factor here. Let's see, let's try to factor over here. 28 we can describe as 2 times 14, where 2 is prime. We have to break the 14 down. 2 times 7, and that looks like, since 7's prime and 2's prime, we've finished factoring or breaking down 28. 32, on the other hand, we can say is 2 times 16. 2 is prime. 16 is 4 times 4. And 4 is 2 times 2, each one of these. So we're going to replace 28 with 2 times 2 times 7. 32 is a product of 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 5 2's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. This is how we rewrite 32 as a product of its primes. Let's use the cancellation property again. 2 over 2. That first set of 2's are gone. 2 over 2. The second set of 2's are gone. I can't cancel the 7 because there's no 7 in the denominator. And we just have a series of 2's there. So our final answer is going to be 7 over 8. Because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8 in the denominator, and there's a 7 alone in the numerator. We have simplified or reduced this fraction. It's 7/8. So let's go to number 11. 65 over 25. If we break this down, is 5 times 13. 5 is prime, 13 is prime. 25 is 5 times 5. So 65 we write as 5 times 13. 25 we write as 5 times 5. Cancel my 5's. We have a 13 left and a 5 left. Final answer is 13/5. And we're done. We reduced this to lowest terms. And this is all we need to do. We don't write this as a mixed number. We don't write it as a decimal. We just simplify and reduce to lowest terms. 13/5 is perfectly fine. 38 over 19 for number 13. And maybe we should put it again in the middle. Let's break down 38. 38. 2 times 19. So 38 is 2 times 19. These are two primes. 19 is prime. By the cancellation property, 19's go away, and we're left with that 2. Now we can say, since the 2 is left on top, we keep it on top. You might say, is there a 1 down here? Maybe, or I should say yes, we could write it that way. But 2 divided by 1 is actually 2. And some of you might have noticed from the start, couldn't I have just divided and said 38 divided by 19, because this is what this is? Couldn't I have said from the start that this is 2? And the answer is yes. But going through the factor tree process, notice we can still get the same answer. So either way would be perfectly fine. Number 15. (48/18). Factor trees for 48. 6 times 8. Break down 6. 2 times 3. Break down the 8. 2 times 4. And break 4 down. 2 times 2. 18. 2 times 9. And 9. 3 times 3. So we're going to write 48 as 2 times 3 times 2 times a couple of other 2's. And then 18 is 2 times 3 times 3. Okay? Let's actually cancel now. A 2 on top, and there's a 2 on the bottom. A 3 on top, and a 3 on the bottom. Notice that we can't cancel any of the 2's on top, because there's no 2's on the bottom, and there's no 3's on top. So in other words, the pairs that we're canceling top and bottom, we're done. Again, 2 times 2 times 2, we find is 8, and there's a 3 on the bottom. So the fraction 48/18 does reduce to, in fact, 8/3. We don't write this as a mixed number or a decimal. This is a reduced fraction. It's improper. That's perfectly fine. We're just going to reduce these fractions. (17) 66/44. We're going to break down these fractions. 66 is written as 11 times 6, where 11 is prime. 6 is 2 times 3. 44 is 4 times 11. 11 is prime. And 4 is 2 times 2. Okay. 11 times 2 times 3 for the 66. And then 2 times 2 times 11 for the 44. 11's cancel. The 2's cancel. We have a 3 and a 2 that's left. Final answer is 3 halves. Number 19. 14/20. 14 is written as 2 times 7. 20 we can say is 4 times 5. 5 is prime. And 4 is 2 times 2. So we're going to have 2 times 7 over 2 times 2 times 5. We're now going to cancel a 2 and a 2. And it looks like that's all we can cancel. I have a 7 on top but not on bottom. And I don't have pairs that match top to bottom. So we're not going to cancel further. This is done. Final answer, 7/10. Okay? Because 2 times 5 here is 10. (21) 40/25. We're going to break down 40. 8 times 5 is 40. 5 is prime. 4 times 2 is 8. And then 2 times 2. 25 is 5 times 5. So 40 we write as 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. 25 is 5 times 5. Cancel your 5s. Looks like that's all we can do. And again, it looks like we get 8/5. Don't have to write this as a mixed number. We just have to simplify or reduce to lowest terms. Number 23. Six over 35. We break 6 down as 2 times 3, and 35 is 5 times 7. Break the numbers down into the product of their primes. 2 times 3 over 5 times 7, and notice that nothing cancels. Since nothing cancels, that means the original fraction they gave us was already reduced. It was already simplified. It's already in lowest terms. Okay, number 25. 25 here is the product of two fractions. 12 over 35 times 15 over 16. Now remember what we said here. When you multiply fractions, you multiply horizontally across. So that means I have 12 times 15 over 35 times 16. Now instead of actually multiplying again, we're just going to break these numbers down here. And so I'm not going to go through the details of breaking some of these numbers down because we've already done a number of them already. So I'm going to go straight to breaking them down and describing them, meaning 12 is actually 2 times 2, which is 4, times 3. 15 is really 3 times 5. We're done with the numerator. 35 is 5 times 7, and then 16, we got 4 2's multiplied together, and that's going to be 16. So I actually broke all these numbers down here into their primes. And the reason we do that again is so that we can cancel the pairs, top and bottom. Top and bottom, those 2's go away. We can't get rid of a 3 because there's no 3's down here. We can get rid of a 5, there's a 5 down here. What we have left here, I circle because it's very easy to see or make a mistake and think that numbers are really gone when they're really there. So I go back and circle this. Final answer is going to be 9 over 28. And you're done. You've multiplied these two fractions, and even more so, you gave an answer that has a simplified fraction result, and that's what we're looking for. All answers that are given to us have to be simplified. (27) 18 over 35 times 25 over 9. So we're going to break down these numbers. 18 is broken down as 9 times 2, and 25 is broken down as 5 times 5. 35 is 5 times 7, and 9 is 3 times 3. Let's use our cancellation property. 5 goes away, and it looks like that's it. Circle what's left. 10 over 7. And we're done. (29) 16 over 9 times 5 over 18. Okay. Remember, don't really multiply. You write this as 16 times 5 over 9 times 18. And now we're going to break down every number here. 16 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times this 5. 9 is 3 times 3. 18 is 3 times 3 times 2. So we broke down every number here. And what we're going to do now is use the cancellation property. I have a 2 on top and a 2 on bottom. I can cancel. There are no other 2's on top and bottom. And in fact, there isn't a 5 on the bottom, only on top. So it looks like this is the only pair of numbers I can cancel. Everything else that's left, I have to multiply. So I get 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 5 will be 40. 3 times 3 is 9, and another 3 times 3 is 9, so that's 9 times 9, this is 81. This fraction here is reduced, and it's also the product here of multiplying these two fractions. Now you might be fooled into thinking that you could reduce the fraction 40 over 81. Their answer is you can't. You see, by using the factor tree method here, we break these numbers into their building blocks. And there's not going to be any other numbers that will come out of both numerator and denominator. The factor trees here, I have 2's and a 5, but down here, they don't cancel with my 3's. And so this is guaranteed to be done. This is guaranteed to be reduced. (31) 20 over 49 times 14 over 15. Multiply horizontally across. 20 times 14 over 49 times 15. Now we're going to break our numbers down. 20 is written as 2 times 2 times 5. 14 is 2 times 7. 49, 7 times 7, and 15 is 3 times 5. So if we look at this and find or look for, because we're going to use this cancellation property, number on top and number on bottom. I see a 5 on top and a 5 on the bottom. I see a 7 on top and a 7 on the bottom. And that's it. And so let's go back and carefully circle what's left so we can give the correct answer. We got 2 times 2 times 2, and that's going to give us an 8. 7 times 3 is 21. This answer here is reduced to lowest terms. We're done. (33) We get the whole number 12 times 5 over 18. Now this 12 is a whole number. You can put this as, or write 12 as a fraction by dividing by 1. Remember, we multiply fractions by multiplying horizontally across. Now 1 times 18 turns out to be just simply 18, so I could just list the 18 on the bottom in my denominator. And now I have to simplify this. I'm going to break this down. 12 is written as 2 times 2 times 3, and don't forget your 5 is here. 9 is 3 times 3 times 2. So break down the 12, 5 is prime, break down the 18, and now use your cancellation property to simplify your result. A 2 on top, 2 on bottom cancels. A 3 on bottom, 3 on top cancels. We're left with a 3, a 5, and a 2. 2 times 5 is 10, and that 3 is alone on the bottom. Final answer here is 10/3. (35) A whole number 4 times 2/5. And it's the same process. You could put this as 4 over 1, and remember that when you multiply fractions, you multiply horizontally across. 4 times 2 over 1 times 5, which is 5. We break these numbers down. The only number that breaks down is the 4, because 2 is already prime and 5 is prime. So I broke down the 4, I left the 2, and I left the 5. And notice nothing cancels. What this means is, if I multiply all these numbers together, 8, keep the 5, final answer is going to be 8/5. Nothing canceled. $37. 5 times 4 over 15. A whole number, 5, multiplied by a fraction. So I can write my whole number as a fraction, 5 over 1. And don't forget that when you multiply horizontally across. Once I've done this multiplication step, I use the cancellation property, but I have to factor all my numbers here. 5 is already prime. 14 is 2 times 7. 15 is 3 times 5. Cancellation says only the 5s can go away because they're on top and bottom. And these are the numbers that are left. So 2 times 7 will be 14, and that 3 is left on the bottom. So this is 14/3. $39. The whole number 8 times the fraction 3/4. Yet again, write this as 8 over 1. Multiply fractions horizontally across. So this is 8 times 3 over 4. Now, being consistent with this method here means I'm going to factor my 8 as 2 times 2 times 2. I'll leave my 3 alone because it's prime, and I factor 4 as 2 times 2. Let's use our cancellation property. 2 on top, 2 on bottom, they're gone. 2 on top, 2 on bottom, they're gone. You have this number 6 because it's 2 times 3. But that number 6 is on top. Now, since everything is gone in the bottom, just put a 1 there. So you have 6 over 1. And 6 over 1 is really the value 6. So 8 times 3/4 really is the value 6. $41. 4/5 times 5/4. Notice these are reciprocals. Now remember, we've seen in class that the product of reciprocals is always 1, meaning A over B times B over A, we've seen is A times B, B times A. Now we can look at it different ways. We can cancel. Everything's gone, a 1 on top, 1 on bottom, 1 over 1. The answer here is 1. So if we recognize this, we can say, oh, this simply is 1, because we're multiplying together two reciprocals. Notice always, or let's also notice, that 4 times 5 is actually 20. 5 times 4 is 20. And then 20 divided by 20 is also 1. So either way, we get 1 here. And that's when we notice that we actually have reciprocals. 4 here, 4 down here, a 5 and a 5. They're flipped over. Anyway, we talked about this. 43. 2/5 times 5/2. Remember, reciprocals. You multiply fractions horizontally across. This is 10 over 10, or just what? 1. $45. We're going to these division questions. 10, let's do this here. 10 over 49 divided by 15 over 7. Remember what we do. You keep the first fraction the same, 10 over 49. I'm going to put this in red, or let's put it in purple. We flip the second fraction over. It's now 7 over 15, and now we multiply. So a division question becomes a multiplication question if we flip over the second fraction. This is flipped over, and it's now multiplication. We multiply fractions horizontally across. Again, don't really multiply. So it's 10 times 7 over 49 times 15. Now we don't really multiply again because we're going to break down all of these numbers. 10 is written as 2 times 5. Let's write that bigger. Seven is already prime. We can't break it down. 49 is 7 times 7, and 15 is 3 times 5. Cancellation property. 7 goes away, 7 goes away. 5 and a 5. You're left with 2 over 7 times 3, which is 2 over 21. So we divided these fractions. Here we go. And we gave an answer in reduced form, reduced to lowest terms. (47) 8 over 25 divided by 4 over 5. Keep the first fraction the same, 8 over 25, and then multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. Flip the second fraction over. 4/5 becomes 5/4, and multiply. When you multiply fractions, you multiply horizontally across. So this becomes 8 times 5 over 25 times 4. Break your numbers down. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. 5 is already prime. 25 is 5 times 5, and 4 is actually 2 times 2. So we broke down the 8, the 25, and the 4. Notice 5 is already prime. We can now use our cancellation property. 2 and 2, 2 and 2, 5 and 5. You are done. Final answer here is 2/5. That's 47. (49) 6 over 35 divided by 4 over 7. Keep the first fraction the same. Flip the second fraction over. 7/4, and now be sure to multiply. When you multiply fractions, you multiply horizontally across. 6 times 7 over 35 times 4. We're going to simplify this and break these numbers down. 6 is written as 2 times 3. 7 is prime. 35 is 5 times 7. And 4 is 2 times 2. Using the cancellation property, 2's gone, 2's gone, 7's gone, 7's gone. We've got 3 over 5 times 2, or 3 over 10. We divided these fractions here, and we gave our answer in reduced form, reduced to lowest terms. (51) 15 over 22 times, or divided by, 20 over 11. Keep your first fraction the same and flip that second fraction over. 11 over 20, and now you multiply. You multiply fractions by multiplying horizontally across. 15 times 11 over that 22 times 20. Now, we're going to have to simplify this answer. We're going to break these numbers down into their primes, into the building blocks. So 15 is 3 times 5. 11's prime. 22 is 2 times 11. And 20 is 2 times 2 times 5. We broke this down, this down, this down. 11 was already prime. Okay. We're going to use our cancellation property. 5 goes away, and 11 goes away, but the 3 remains. There's not a 3 on the bottom, but there's a 2, and there's a few more 2's. So our final answer is going to be 3 over 8. We've reduced this to lowest terms. $53. 12 divided by 20 over 11. Now remember, we got a whole number here. We can describe that 12 as a fraction, and now we're dividing two fractions. Remember what you do. You keep the first fraction the same. The second one you flip over, you write it as a reciprocal, and now you multiply. Make sure you multiply now. You multiply by multiplying horizontally across. So we get 12 times 11 over this 20, because 1 times 20 is 20. Break the numbers down. 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. 11's prime. 20 is 2 times 2 times 5. By the cancellation property, a 2 on top and bottom go away. Go away. We're left with, final answer, 33 over 5. $55 is 6 divided by 2/3. We're going to write 6 as a fraction, 6 over 1. So now we're dividing fractions. 6 over 1, don't forget to flip the second fraction over and multiply. You multiply fractions by multiplying horizontally across. So we get 6 times 3, and 1 times 2 is 2. Now we could be consistent and break down the 6 and say 6 is 2 times 3, already times 3 over 2. We could cancel the 2's. And we got 3 times 3 on top. Now that's on top. It stays on top. 3 times 3 is 9. Nothing's on the bottom. We could put 1. But 9 divided by 1 is actually 9. Now notice we could have went over here and said 6 times 3 we know to be 18. And that's being divided by 2. There's a 2 down here. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So either approach would actually work fine. The answer is 9. $57 here is 4. Let's write this a little better. 4 divided by 4/5. 4 over 1. Write it as a fraction. 4 over 1. Let's be consistent here. Get the right blue. 4 over 1. Flip the second fraction over. That's going to be 5 over 4. And now we multiply. You multiply fractions horizontally across. And so this is going to give us, let's write it here, 4 times 5 over 4. Now if you notice that the 4's cancel, you don't have to break them down. 5 is alone on top, and you say that's 5 over 1. Or we simply say that the answer is 5, because 5 divided by 1 is 5. 59 is 4/5 divided by 8. Now, we could do the same thing. We write our whole number 8 as a fraction, 8 over 1. So we really have 4/5 divided by 8 over 1. Remember, keep the first fraction the same, flip the second fraction over, and multiply. You multiply fractions horizontally across. So we end up here with 4 times 8 over 5 times 1. Now notice our answer has to be given as a simplified fraction, reduced to lowest terms. 4 is 2 times 2. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. And that's all over 5. And so you're going to notice that nothing's going to cancel because we don't have any 2's on the bottom. We only have a 5. So the final answer is going to be found simply by multiplying 4 and 8. And we know that's 32. And that's going to be over the value 5. And we're done. This is reduced to lowest terms because there is nothing that cancels over here. So you're done. (61) 3/8 divided by 15. We're going to turn this into a fraction, so it's 15 over 1. So we really have 3/8 divided by that 15 over 1. Keep the first fraction the same, flip the second fraction over, that's 1 over 15, and now you multiply. You're going to multiply this horizontally across. So I get 3 over 8 times 15. We're going to break these numbers down. 3 stays the same. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. 15 is 3 times 5. We're going to get to cancel. 3 and 3. So in the denominator, notice we only have 2's left. 2 times 2 times 2, which is really 8. And then 8 times 5 is 40. So in the bottom, in the denominator, we have 40. Let's write that a little nicer. The numerator, everything's gone. So just put a nice 1 there. Final answer is 1 over 40. (63) 9 divided by 1/5. 9 over 1. So we're going to write this as 9 over 1. Now, divided by 1/5. Keep the first fraction the same. Flip the second fraction over. And now what? You're going to multiply. You multiply fractions horizontally across. 9 times 5 is 45. 1 times 1 is 1. 45 divided by 1 is 45. (65) 2/7 divided by 10. Write your whole number 10 as a fraction, 10 over 1. So we have 2/7 divided by 10 over 1. Keep the first fraction the same, flip the second fraction over, and you multiply. Two times 1 is 2. 7 times 10 is what we get here in the bottom, in the denominator. Break your numbers down. 2 is prime. 7's prime. 10 we write as 2 times 5. And so when we simplify and use the cancellation property, only the 2 goes away. We got a 7 and a 5 on the bottom, which is really 35. They're in the denominator position. If everything's gone in that numerator, put that 1 there. So there's a 1 on top. Final answer is 1 over 35. $67. 5 over 14 times 7 over 10 times 3 over 20. Now you have a string of multiplication here. We're multiplying 3 fractions together. And how you do that is the same way. We could generalize. Still multiply your fractions horizontally across. That means multiply every numerator together. 5 times 7 times 3 divided by the product of the denominators. 14 times 10 times 20. But don't really multiply here. As we've seen in all the other problems in these examples, just break these numbers down. Now the numerator has just primes, 5, 7, and 3. We can break the denominator down. So we have 5, 7, 3 on top. And let's be careful. 14 here is 2 times 7. 10 is 2 times 5. 20 is 2 times 2 times 5, 4 times 5. So we broke down the 14, the 10, and the 20. Now we're going to use the cancellation property. 5 on top and bottom go away. 7 on top and bottom go away. And it looks like a 3 remains because there is no 3's in the denominator. So my final answer is going to be 3 over, we have to find out what the product of 2 and these numbers here are. So that looks to me that's going to be 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 5 is 20, 20 times 2 is 40, 40 times 2 is 80. Final answer is 3 over 80. Let's write this a little better. 3 over 80. $69. Okay. Here we go. 5 over 14 times 7 over 10. And now don't forget we have division here of 3 over 20. We're going to flip that over. 3 over 20 is actually 20 over 3, and we're going to multiply. So don't forget, when we multiply fractions, we multiply horizontally across. So that's 5 times 7 times 20 over 14 times 10 times 3. Now this answer has to be simplified, so we have to break down our numbers here. 5 and 7 are prime, and so is 3. We don't break those down. They're already broken down. But we're going to break down the others. So we have 5 times 7 times 2 times 2 times 5 over 2 times 7, 2 times 5 times 3. Let's cancel. Cancellation property. 5 goes away, 5 goes away. 7 goes away, 7 goes away. 2 and 2. Another pair of 2's. Final answer here is 5/3. So we've broken down or reduced this product and quotient to lowest terms. Final answer is 5/3, and that's it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to write this as a mixed number or a decimal. Just a fraction answer reduced to lowest terms.